Look at this map. This is not a map of voters. It's not a map of population. This is a map of money.
But if you live here, in the vast dark middle, in the so-called flyover states, you are watching your town die. The factories are gone. The young people left and never came back. The only new building on Main Street is a Dollar General.
And you are asking a very simple, angry question. Why? Why does all the money, all the talent, and all the power get sucked into just 5 or 6 superstar cities? Why can't we just spread the wealth around? Why can't Amazon build its HQ 2 in West Virginia?
For decades, politicians told you it was just bad luck or bad policy. They said, just wait, the market will fix it. If New York gets too expensive, companies will move to Ohio. That was a lie. The market isn't fixing it. In fact, the market is causing it.
In 2008, while the global financial system was melting down, a guy named Paul Krugman walked onto a stage in Stockholm to accept a Nobel Prize. He didn't win it for predicting the housing crash, even though he did. He won it for telling us the brutal truth about geography.
He proved mathematically that the economy works like a black hole.
Once a city gets big enough, it creates a gravitational pull that is impossible to escape. It sucks in everything, capital, brains, innovation, and leaves the periphery empty. It's not a bug in the system, it is the system.
This is called the new economic geography.
And it explains almost everything about the anger tearing America apart today. It explains why a software engineer in Silicon Valley makes 10x more than a mechanic in Detroit. It explains the rise of populism. It explains why your rent is so high and why your hometown is fading away.
Today, we're going to look at the math behind the inequality. And, fair warning, it suggests that for small towns, there might not be no coming back.
Before Krugman, economists had a very boring explanation for why the world trades. It was called comparative advantage.
The logic was simple. If Florida has sunshine, they grow oranges. If Saudi Arabia has oil, they sell oil. You trade what you were good at making. Simple.
But in the 1970s, Paul Krugman looked at the data and realized something weird. The biggest trade routes weren't between oil countries and orange countries. They were between rich countries and other rich countries.
Germany sells BMWs to America. America sells Fords to Germany. Wait a minute. Why? Both countries have factories, both have engineers, both have steel. Why waste billions of dollars shipping cars back and forth across the Atlantic? It seems totally inefficient.
Krugman realized the old theories were missing 2 huge factors: economies of scale and the human love for variety.
Let's use a metaphor. Let's talk about ice cream. Imagine a tiny village. The market is so small that the local ice cream shop can only afford to make one flavor. Let's say vanilla. If they try to make strawberry too, it gets too expensive. They don't have the scale to justify the cost. So everyone eats vanilla. Boring.
Now imagine a massive city. There are millions of customers. Because the market is huge, the shop can afford to buy giant mixing machines, economies of scale. They can make vanilla, chocolate, Rocky Road, and mint chip.
This is where the magic happens. People don't just want calories, they want choice.
Krugman proved that we trade cars for the same reason we want 31 flavors of ice cream. Americans could drive Fords, but some of them prefer the flavor of a BMW. Germans could drive Volkswagens, but some prefer a Jeep.
So, to satisfy this craving for variety at a cheap price, production has to be concentrated. You can't have a tiny car factory in every small town making every model. That's too expensive. You need one giant factory in Bavaria making all the BMWs for the whole world to get the cost down.
This simple idea that we need massive scale to get massive variety is the engine of the modern world. But there is a dark side.
Because factories need to be huge to be efficient, they can't be everywhere. They have to pick a spot. And once they pick a spot, they attract suppliers, then workers, then Starbucks, and yoga studios.
This creates a snowball effect. The chosen spot becomes a superstar, and the places that weren't chosen, they don't just stay the same, they start to starve.
Okay, to understand why your small town in Ohio is dying, we have to look at a small town in China called Kiaotu.
You have never heard of this place. It's not on most tourist maps, it's dusty, it's loud, and it smells like burning plastic. But Kiaotu controls your wardrobe.
This one single town produces 60% of all the buttons on Earth. Look at your shirt right now. Look at your jeans. There's a statistically high chance that the little piece of plastic holding your clothes together came from this one specific zip code.
How is this even possible? Why aren't button factories spread out evenly across the world? Why isn't there one in Mexico, one in Vietnam, and one in France?
This is the extreme reality of what Paul Krugman called agglomeration. In the old days, factories were located near raw materials. Steel mills were near coal mines. But buttons are made of plastic. Plastic is everywhere. You could build a button factory anywhere.
But you don't. You build it in Kiaotu.
Why? Because of the spillover effect.
Imagine you're a brave entrepreneur. You decide to open a button factory in a small town in Nebraska to bring back jobs.
Day 1. You need a machine part fixed. In Nebraska, you have to order it from China and wait 3 weeks. Your factory stops. In Kyoto, the mechanic is next door. He fixes it in 15 minutes.
Day 2. You need a specific shade of blue dye. In Nebraska, you have to mix it yourself. In Kyoto, there is a dyeing specialist across the street who has 500 shades of blue ready to go.
Day 3, you need skilled workers. In Nebraska, you have to train farmers from scratch. In Kyoto, everyone you meet at the bar knows how to run a molding injection machine.
Do you see the problem? Krugman proved that once a cluster starts forming, it becomes a self-reinforcing loop. The more button factories move to Kyoto, the more suppliers move there. The more suppliers move there, the cheaper it gets to make buttons. The cheaper it gets, the more factories move there.
It's a gravitational pull. It sucks the entire industry into one tiny dot on the map. And for the rest of the world, it's game over.
You literally cannot compete. Even if you pay your workers $0, you still lose because you don't have the ecosystem, you don't have the cluster.
This is why Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley. It's not because the weather is nice. It's because the button makers of the tech world, coders, VCs, lawyers, are all clustered in one pile, feeding off each other.
So Kyoto became rich, it became the center, and the thousands of other towns that used to make buttons, they became the periphery. They became ghost towns. This is the ruthless efficiency of the Krugman model. The winner takes all.
So if clustering makes the world more efficient, everyone wins, right?
Dead wrong. This is where Paul Krugman's math gets dark. He described a phenomenon called the core periphery model.
In traditional economics, things are supposed to balance out. It's like water seeking its own level. If New York gets too expensive and crowded, businesses should naturally move to Ohio to save money. Rents in New York go down, rents in Ohio go up. Equilibrium, peace on earth.
He proved that the forces pulling people into the city are often much stronger than the forces pushing them out.
Think about it. Why do you tolerate paying $3,000 for a shoebox apartment in New York? Because that's where the jobs are, that's where the dating pool is, that's where the action is.
This creates a lock-in effect. The rich city becomes a black hole. It doesn't just attract money, it strips the surrounding areas of their most valuable asset, human capital. This is the tragedy of the brain drain. Imagine you are the smartest kid in a small town in West Virginia. You get straight A's, you have big dreams. What is the rational economic choice for you?
Is it to stay and revitalize your town? No, the rational choice is to leave. You move to the core to maximize your income.
So the core gets your talent, your taxes, and your energy. The periphery gets nothing. It actually gets worse because it lost its future leader.
Krugman called this circular cumulative causation. Success breeds more success for the city. Failure breeds more failure for the town. It is a death spiral.
The market isn't fixing the inequality between the coast and the heartland. The market is accelerating it. And here is the twist that makes people angry: productivity.
The people in the core aren't necessarily working harder than the people in the periphery. A waiter in San Francisco works just as hard as a waiter in Mississippi, but the SF waiter makes 3 times the money. Why? Because he is standing inside the cluster. He is drafting off the productivity of the geniuses around him.
So geography creates a rigged game. If you are born in the shadow of the black hole, the economy is structurally designed to leave you behind.
So 2020 happened. The pandemic hit, and suddenly every tech bro with a laptop shouted, "This is it! The Krugman model is dead."
The logic seems solid. If we have Zoom, Slack, and Starlink, why do we need to crowd into smelly, expensive cities? We can move to a farm in Montana, work for Google, and live like kings. The centripetal force is broken. The black hole is closed.
But here we are in 2025. Look around. Rents in Manhattan are higher than ever. Silicon Valley houses are still $3 million, and the big tech companies are forcing employees back to their desks. What happened? Why didn't the internet kill the city? Paul Krugman knew the answer 15 years ago. It comes down to a concept called tacit knowledge. There are 2 types of information in the world.
Codifiable knowledge, spreadsheets, code, manuals, this stuff can be sent over email. It travels at the speed of light.
Tacit knowledge is the vibe. It's the gossip. It's the trust. It's the random idea you get when you bump into a colleague at the coffee machine.
Krugman argued that tacit knowledge is the most valuable commodity on Earth. And guess what? It cannot travel through a fiber optic cable. It only travels face to face. This is why the cluster is unkillable. If you are a young banker, you don't move to Wall Street for the salary. You move there to overhear the conversation at the lunch table next to you. You move there for the knowledge spillovers.
If you stay in your bedroom in Montana, you might get the paycheck, but you are cut off from the flow of ideas. You become a remote worker, replaceable, isolated, and eventually outsourced to an AI or a cheaper human in India.
So what about the Zoom towns? What about those small towns that did get an influx of remote workers? Well, that's actually a horror story, not a success story. When high-paid tech workers invade a small town, they don't bring the industry, they just bring their money. They buy up the houses, drive up the prices, and push the locals out. It's hyper-gentrification.
The town doesn't become a new Silicon Valley. It becomes a theme park for rich people. The local economy is still hollow. There are no factories, no innovation, just expensive coffee shops catering to the laptop class.
Krugman's math predicted this. Technology doesn't flatten the world. It makes the world spiky. The peaks, superstar cities get higher and sharper. The valleys, rural areas get flatter and emptier. We tried to fight gravity with webcams, and gravity won.
Paul Krugman's Nobel Prize taught us a lesson that is hard to swallow. We like to think that with enough hard work, any town can become the next New York. We like to think that the internet made place irrelevant.
But the math says otherwise. Geography is destiny. The forces of agglomeration, the physics of the economy are pulling us apart. They are stacking the deck in favor of the core and against the periphery.
This isn't a conspiracy, it's efficiency. It's the ice cream logic on a global scale. But efficiency has a human cost.
When we let the invisible hand redraw the map, we end up with a nation of winners and losers. We end up with a political map that is red versus blue, simply because it is rural versus urban.
So if you are watching this from a dying small town, you have a brutal choice to make. Do you stay and fight gravity, or do you pack your bags and move to the black hole? Krugman didn't give us a solution, he just gave us the map. The rest is up to us.
I want to know your story. Did you have to leave your hometown to find a job, or are you one of the people trying to save it? Tell me in the comments. If you want to see the invisible forces shaping your life, hit subscribe.